All right. So you're getting ready for an ICT Project Manager interview. That's great. It's a field that's just exploding right now. Tons of opportunities to do some really cool tech stuff. And hey, who wouldn't love that kind of salary we're hearing about from RoleCatcher?
Very fun.
But yeah, interviews can be a little nerve-wracking, right? So many ways it could go wrong.
What's interesting is ICT Project Manager interviews aren't just about, ticking off the boxes for technical skills. It's really more about how you think, how you lead, how you handle those curveballs that are bound to happen on complex projects.
That's exactly why we're doing this deep dive. We've got all this info from RoleCatcher, their interview guides and career guides, all that good stuff. And we're going to break it all down to give you that edge.
We're going to unpack those tricky questions they throw at you. Not just what to say, but how to say it, and even how to sort of anticipate those follow-up questions they hit you with.
Yeah, those can really throw you off. We're also going to sprinkle in some of RoleCatcher's broader career advice. You know the stuff that can help you not just in the interview, but throughout your whole career path.
And of course, we can't forget about the RoleCatcher AI. That's a real game changer. Being able to tailor your answers and get feedback for the specific job you're going for? We'll dive into that a bit later, though.
Sounds good. But first, let's tackle some of those interview questions. Starting with one that seems pretty basic. What led you to become an ICT project manager?
It seems simple, right? But this is your chance to really capture their attention and, make a personal connection. Don't just list off your past jobs. You want to paint a picture of what sparked your interest in tech, how your experiences, even the ones that aren't strictly project management, shaped the skills you have now.
Yeah, so maybe you built websites in high school. Or led a volunteer project that was basically, organizing chaos. Those are the things you want to pull from to show how you develop those project management skills.
Exactly. And be sure to tie it back to this specific role. What excites you about the work they do, the challenges they have? That shows you're not just looking for any job, you're looking for this job.
Right, okay.
Right.
But they're going to want more than just enthusiasm, right? That's where that potential follow-up comes in. What's a project you're particularly proud of and why?
You've got to have that STAR story ready. Situation, task, action, result. It's a classic framework for a reason. Choose a project that really lets you showcase the skills that matter most for this particular role.
So if they're looking for someone who's great with, tight deadlines and keeping things on budget, that's the kind of project you want to highlight.
Exactly. And remember to quantify your results whenever you can. Instead of saying, we finished on time, say, we delivered 2 weeks ahead of schedule and stayed 10% under budget. Those details really stand out.
Makes sense. Okay, next up. How do you approach project planning and management? Time to show them what you know.
This is where you walk them through your process. Hit all those key points. Methodology, waterfall, agile, hybrid. Explain what you prefer, and importantly, why it's a good fit for the kind of work they do.
Then talk about how you prioritize. How do you decide what gets tackled first? And make sure you connect it to the business goals, not just what you feel like doing.
Collaboration is also a big one in project management, so emphasize that. How do you get input from stakeholders? Make sure everyone's on the same page. And handle those inevitable course corrections that come up.
Oh, yeah, and then get ready for this one. Tell me about a time a plan went off track. What did you do? They really want to see how you handle pressure.
Don't shy away from this one. Everyone's had projects that, went sideways at some point. Pick an example where you can show off your problem-solving skills. How you stayed calm, assessed the situation, and came up with a solution.
It's also good if you could show that you learned something from that experience. It shows you have a growth mindset, which employers love.
Absolutely. Speaking of challenges, question 3 is all about risk management. How do you manage project risks and issues?
This is where you get to be that proactive problem solver. Tell them about your system. How do you spot risks early? What tools or frameworks do you use to assess and mitigate them?
And then give them a real-world example. A time you identified a problem, took action, and either totally prevented disaster or at least, minimized the damage.
And be ready for that follow-up question that shows you've done your research. Something like, what's the biggest risk you see on this project and how would you address it?
This is where all that time you spent researching the company and this specific role really pays off. Show them you've thought critically about their challenges and have some ideas on how to tackle them.
Okay, let's move on to 2 questions that often come up together. Questions 4 and 5. These are about budgeting and handling competing priorities.
Question 4 is all about your budgeting experience. Be specific about how big the budgets you've managed were, what tools you've used, and your track record of, staying on target. If you don't have a ton of experience, highlight those transferable skills like financial analysis and resource allocation. Things like that show that you're good with finances.
In question 5, that's your time to tell another star story. They'll ask you something like, can you describe a time when you had to manage a project with competing priorities?
Think of a project where you had to juggle all kinds of demands. Time, budget, scope creep, stakeholder, the works. Explain the tough decisions you made and, of course, the positive outcome you achieved.
And remember quantifiable results. Saved X% of the budget, delivered Y weeks ahead of schedule, that kind of thing. It helps them remember you.
It also adds credibility and, really drives home the impact of what you did.
Now let's tackle questions 6 and 7. These focus on leadership and stakeholder engagement. More star stories time.
For question 6, which will be something like, can you describe a time when you had to lead a team to complete a project? Choose a project where your leadership really made a difference. What challenges did the team run into? How did you motivate them to probably delegate effectively and handle any conflicts that came up?
Okay, and for question 7. They'll want to know how you keep those stakeholders happy and informed. They might ask, how do you ensure project stakeholders are informed and engaged throughout the project? So this is your chance to show off those communication skills.
That's right. How do you tailor your message to different audiences? Like executives versus the tech team. What tools and methods do you use to keep everyone in the loop and, get their buy-in along the way?
Be ready for those curveballs too, like how do you handle a difficult stakeholder? Describe a time you had to give someone on your team negative feedback.
You want to have a good example ready that shows you can handle those tough situations professionally and with grace.
Okay, moving on to a group of questions that are all about adaptability and scaling your skills. Questions 8, 9, and 10. They focus on managing remote teams, tight deadlines, and large teams.
These are to see how you handle different project dynamics and whether you can, adapt your approach. Choose examples that highlight your strengths in these areas.
So for remote teams, you'll want to focus on clear communication, task tracking, and how you build trust and rapport virtually. For tight deadlines, it's all about prioritizing, staying focused, delegating effectively, and not panicking under pressure.
Right. And for large teams, explain how you coordinate across departments. Make sure everyone's roles and responsibilities are clear.
Right.
And manage that sometimes overwhelming flow of information.
Now, before we jump into the next set of questions, let's talk about RoleCatcher's secret weapon. Their AI-powered features.
This is what really makes RoleCatcher stand out. It's not just information, it's personalized support. Their AI can actually analyze job descriptions and then suggest specific skills to highlight on your CV and in your answers. It's like having a career coach right there in your pocket, constantly fine-tuning your approach.
We'll break that down in more detail later. But for now, let's get back to those interview questions.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive on acing your ICT Project Manager interview. We've covered a lot so far, laying out strategies to handle those tough questions. Now let's get a bit more practical. We'll look at some specific examples that you can, adapt for your own situation.
Right. Let's go back to that first question we talked about. What led you to become an ICT project manager? Remember, it's all about showing your passion and connecting your story to their needs.
Think back to those early experiences that made you interested in technology and problem solving.
Like maybe you were the tech support person for your whole family. Or you built a website for a local business just for fun.
Yeah, those are great examples. You could work that into a story like, I've always been fascinated by how tech can solve real problems. Even in high school, I was the one everyone came to when their computer crashed. And I loved figuring those things out. So that's what ultimately led me to ICT Project Management, because it combines my technical skills with my passion for finding creative solutions.
I like that. It really shows genuine interest and highlights those core skills every ICT project manager needs.
Exactly. Now, what about that potential follow-up question? What's a project you're particularly proud of and why?
Don't forget that STAR framework we discussed. Situation, task, action, result.
It's your best friend for this kind of question. Let's say, for example, you led the implementation of a new cloud-based project management system at your last company. You could say something like, one project that stands out is when I led the transition to a new cloud-based project management platform. We were facing some challenges with, communication silos and workflows that weren't very efficient. So I did some research and proposed a new solution, which involved migrating all our project data training over 100 employees and integrating the new system with our existing IT infrastructure. It was a complex project, but by planning each stage, carefully communicating proactively with stakeholders, and empowering my team, we managed to launch the platform on time and under budget. It streamlined our processes, improved collaboration, and ultimately saved the company a lot of time and money.
That's a really strong example. You've got that challenging situation, the specific actions you took, and a positive outcome with results they can actually measure.
Exactly.
Now let's dive into the more technical side. They'll almost certainly ask you, how do you approach project planning and management?
This is your chance to show that you understand different methodologies and that you can adapt your approach depending on the project.
So if you're a fan of the Agile methodology, for instance, you could say something like, I usually prefer an Agile approach, especially for ICT projects where there are quick development cycles and things are always changing.
Yeah.
I start by working with the stakeholders to figure out the scope and the objectives and break it down into smaller, more manageable sprints. End of quote. We prioritize tasks based on business value and dependencies, and we have those daily stand-up meetings to keep track of progress and address any issues. Quote, the iterative nature of Agile lets us quickly adapt to changing requirements and deliver value incrementally.
That's a clear explanation of your process. Don't forget to mention how you manage risks and keep everyone working together.
Oh, yeah. Of course, you could add something like, throughout the process, I do regular risk assessments, I figure out potential problems and put mitigation strategies in place. I also really emphasize open communication and collaboration, so I encourage feedback from the team and the stakeholders to make sure everyone is informed and on the same page.
Perfect. Now remember that follow-up question about a time when a plan went off track. They're not looking for someone who's never made a mistake. They want to see how you deal with challenges and learn from them.
Right, so let's say you were managing a software development project, and one of your main vendors didn't deliver a critical component on time. You could say, we were working on a really tight deadline, and when the vendor told us about the delay, it basically threw everything off. I immediately called a meeting with the team and stakeholders to figure out what was happening and explore other options. We found a potential workaround, which involved using an open source library, but that meant we had to do some extra development work. So I went back to the stakeholders and renegotiated the timeline, got the resources we needed, and worked closely with the team to implement the workaround. In the end, we were able to minimize the impact of the delay and deliver the project with very little disruption to the overall functionality.
That's great. It shows you're flexible, a good problem solver, and committed to finding solutions, even when things go wrong.
For sure. Now let's talk about a key part of ICT project management, risk management.
They might ask you something like, how do you manage project risks and issues?
This is your chance to show them you take a proactive approach. Yeah, tell them about your system. Do you use a risk register to keep track of potential risks and how you're going to handle them?
Right. You could say, I think it's really important to identify risks early on and have a plan to address them. I typically use a risk register to document potential risks and then assess how likely they are to happen, what the impact would be, and what mitigation strategies we could use. We regularly review and update the risk register throughout the project, and I always communicate any major risks to the stakeholders to keep things transparent.
Makes sense. And give them a real-world example to bring it to life.
You got it. You could say, in a recent project where we were migrating data, we identified a risk of losing data during the transfer. So to mitigate that risk, we put a strong backup and recovery plan in place, did thorough testing in a staging environment, and made sure all the critical data was backed up before we started the actual migration. This proactive approach meant that the transition went smoothly and we didn't lose any data.
That shows you're serious about risk management and that you have the skills to put effective strategies in place.
Absolutely.
Now be ready for that follow-up question that tests whether you've done your research. What's the biggest risk you foresee on this project, and how would you address it?
This is where all that pre-interview research comes in handy. Let's say you're interviewing for a role that involves implementing a new CRM system. You could say something like, based on what I understand about the project, one risk I see is user adoption. To address that, I would develop a really thorough training and communication plan and get the end users involved throughout the implementation process. I'd also set up a dedicated support team so they can answer any questions or address any concerns during the transition.
That shows you've thought about their specific challenges.
Right.
And that you have a plan to tackle them head on.
Now let's move on to those budget questions.
Time to talk numbers.
When they ask about your budgeting experience, be specific and quantify what you've accomplished. Don't just say you managed budgets. Tell them how big those budgets were and how you tracked expenses.
Okay, so you could say something like, in my previous role, I managed a project budget of $1.5 million. For a complex software development project, I used project management software and financial tracking tools. to monitor expenses, forecast costs, and make sure we stayed within budget. I also implemented some cost-saving measures that ended up reducing overall project expenses by 7%.
That's the kind of detail they're looking for. Now for that competing priorities question. They want to see that you can handle multiple demands effectively.
So think of a project where you had to do just that.
Right.
Let's say you were in charge of launching a new mobile app, while also taking care of ongoing maintenance for an existing platform and dealing with urgent client requests, all at the same time.
Sounds pretty stressful.
Yeah, it was. You could say something like, in one project, I had to deliver a new mobile app on a really tight deadline, while also making sure our existing platform was running smoothly and dealing with critical client issues. Quote, to stay on top of everything, I used a Kanban board to visualize the tasks, delegated responsibilities to the team members who were best suited for each task, and communicated openly with the stakeholders to manage their expectations. We set up a system for triaging client requests so we could prioritize the ones that affected essential functionality. By allocating resources strategically and streamlining our workflows, we were able to launch the mobile app on time, maintain the quality of our existing services, and go above and beyond for our clients.
Those are all really good examples of how to structure your answers. But it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Confidence, clarity, enthusiasm, those are all key.
Absolutely. And that's where RoleCatcher's AI features come in. We'll talk more about that in the next part of our deep dive. But for now, let's keep going with those interview questions. Up next.
Leadership and stakeholder engagement.
Welcome back. We've been really digging into those ICT Project Manager interview questions, giving you the strategies and examples to really impress those hiring managers.
But we saved the best for last. Let's talk about how RoleCatcher's AI can help you ace this whole process.
This is where things get really exciting. We're talking about AI that can analyze job descriptions, suggest skills to highlight, even give you feedback on your practice answers. It's like having a whole team of career coaches in your pocket.
Let's start with their AI-powered CV and resume builder. Imagine you upload your CV, and it gets scanned by a recruiter, someone who knows exactly what this employer wants. That's what RoleCatcher's AI does.
It can find those missing keywords. You know, the ones that might be making your CV invisible to those applicant tracking systems. It suggests relevant skills to emphasize based on the job description.
That's so important. So many great candidates get overlooked just because their CV isn't optimized.
It's true. And the AI can even help you fine-tune the formatting and structure to make sure it's visually appealing and easy to read.
Which is also really important.
It is. And once you've landed the interview, their AI-powered interview prep tools are amazing. They have this huge database of interview questions, all categorized by industry and job role.
So you can practice answering questions that are likely to come up in your specific ICT Project Manager interview. But here's the really cool part. The AI can actually listen to your practice responses and give you feedback.
It's like having a personal interview coach right there with you, pointing out things you can improve.
Yeah. Like maybe you could be more concise or use stronger phrasing. It can even help you anticipate those tricky follow-up questions.
It analyzes your delivery, your tone, even your body language if you're using the video practice feature. It's incredible. You can see those little things that might be holding you back.
Without even realizing it.
Honestly, I've never seen this level of personalized feedback in any other career tool. It's like having a prep course designed just for you.
And for people who get nervous in interviews, the AI can really boost your confidence. You know, by practicing and getting that feedback, you start to feel more prepared and in control.
Definitely. It takes away all the guesswork. You're not just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. You're getting real-time feedback so you can improve your answers and present yourself in the best possible way.
Exactly. And the best part is, RoleCatcher has a free version. So you can try all these amazing features without spending anything.
If you're serious about your job search, you have to check out RoleCatcher.
You won't regret it.
So there you have it.
Okay.
We've covered so much in this deep dive, from understanding what interviewers are looking for, to crafting great answers, and using the power of AI.
You're now equipped with the knowledge, the strategies, and even the technology to really make an impact in your ICT Project Manager interview.
Remember, confidence is key. Believe in yourself, show your passion for technology and project management, and let your personality shine through.
And one last thought. The world of ICT is constantly evolving, so stay curious. Keep learning and embrace those challenges. That's what will help you stand out in this field.
We hope this deep dive has been helpful. Best of luck in your job search. You got this.